And joining me live now is the leader of Katter's Australia Party, Robbie Katter. Robbie, thank you for your time. Well, it's going to be a very busy month for Queenslanders with this upcoming election, and the state needs to pick who they believe will take them into a better future. So let's start with this pledge that opposition leader David Crisafulli has announced to target school dropouts from turning to a life of crime if he wins the election. What do you make of this?
Oh, well, it falls hopelessly short of the expectations, especially of regional Queenslanders, where we've been gripped by a youth crime crisis for many years. And as a response, the KAP has been trying to get buy-in from either of the major parties on bush sentencing. So that's an alternate form of sentencing. So a magistrate can send them into remote areas in smaller groups, break them up. But I would see this announcement. I mean, they're trying, I guess it's something that they're trying, but it's very similar to what we already have in place. And you're still grouping kids of 50 to 100 and you've still got to chase them every day to turn up, and most of those worst kids don't turn up. So for our point of view, and we're pretty close to the action here in North Queensland, where the worst places are Townsville, Cairns and Mount Isa, this falls hopelessly short of what we need as a real consequence for these offenders.
Absolutely. Well, you're right. This youth crime crisis in Queensland has been going on for many years, particularly in the north part of the state. So what do you propose then? What else should David Crisafulli do if he wins the election?
Well, yeah, just impress upon Dave that we need to provide a consequence for these kids. So you can say adult crime, as KAP's been saying for the last 3 or 4 years. And that's it's not bad, but that's really not going to send the message that's required that these kids are roaming the street that know no consequences at the moment. A consequence is that they're sent out for 12 months. So you might say that's adult time, but marrying it up with a consequence that is of some significance to them. So sending them to schools and a consequence, then you can't even force them to turn up every day. And sending them to even to youth detention centres that we currently have, like Cleveland Bay, has 95% recidivism. So that we've proven that doesn't work either. So you need something new that you can force them to do, which would be a bush sentencing, remote sentencing. On that platform, I think you've got some chance of sending the kids a consequence when they present to the magistrate that you're going to a very remote place for 12 months, and we guarantee you'll be away from your friends and family. You won't be hooking up with them in juvie and learning new tricks from them as they have been. So that's the main thing we're presenting as a response to these youth offenders. And castle law, of course, which is the principal crime policy we'll be forcing in the next parliament in Queensland with whoever wants to take government. They must put in castle law so people have the right to defend their homes and their property. And I think that just puts the shoe on the, puts a bit more weight in the victims rather than the offenders. And I think the fact that over 40,000 people signed a petition in Queensland, they desperately want it, says that we're on the right pathway there for something that provides a consequence for people.
Yes, absolutely. It's a tough one. Well, the Queensland Government today announced a new initiative to support landowners to preserve biodiversity. So this means that more Queenslanders can make money by protecting their environment. What do you make of this?
Well, government on both sides of the political fence have made champions of themselves for the environment in terms of land tenure for the last 20 years. Unfortunately, they forgot to present themselves or provide a platform for business and people to operate through land tenure. So, I think biosecurity, anything that comes out of the government on biosecurity, I roll my eyes because I've got a front row seat out here in the bush remote areas where we've got 98% of remnant forest, which means only 2% development in the country that I live in. And our biodiversity is being ruined up here by the non-maintenance of national parks, proliferation of weeds. It's down to zero federal funding for any large weed programs up here. Feral animals, feral pigs, feral cats, ruining biodiversity. So saying that you're just tweaking with tenure and providing some incentives, and most of that stuff is just city talk, and where the real biodiversity counts out in these, these rural, or I should say more natural areas where we've got 98% remnant forest. I tell you what, it's a disaster zone in terms of biosecurity. So I sort of roll my eyes any time I hear incentives. Look, maybe it's a half decent idea, but saying that's going to turn the tide on biosecurity is just a joke.
Now, Robbie, before we let you go, Peter Dutton, the opposition leader, is expected to provide more details on the coalition's nuclear energy plan tomorrow, though the proposal is in regards to 7 nuclear power plants. Now, what is your position on this proposal? Because 2 of the plants are set to be built in Queensland and could actually be operational within the decade.
Yeah, really tip my hat to Peter Dutton for being bold on this issue. It's something that KP's long supported. My father, even before the KP, just had supported this in the energy mix. And it's akin to, all the opposition you'll find to this say we need to include a ban for uranium and nuclear power because it's too expensive. Well, they don't ban Tesla cars because they're too expensive. It's just this gaslighting that comes from the opposition to this, and it's emotionally driven, that says we can't have it. And then so there's no scope for anyone to invest in marketing or research development. And then when they say, well, there's no figures or anything behind it, well, no kidding, because you don't get to, that we don't get to stage 1 on this. You don't legislate against something because it's too expensive. So that's part 1 of this. But the real question is, why wouldn't you just allow it in as an opportunity to broaden our base in renewables? I think this aggressive and crazy pursuit of renewables at the pace that they're doing it is akin to planning to live in a tent for the rest of your life in response to energy, rather than investing in building a bricks and mortar home that will provide you, a better long-term outcome. So having strong, reliable baseload energy in the mix in the future, regardless of cost, having that strong, reliable baseload, which we all have become accustomed to, rather than intermittent supplies, unreliable supplies, that's saying, well, if it is cheaper, which I don't think it is, because they never include all the cost of expanding the transmission network with these renewables, but even if it was, you'd say, well, seeing as though it's cheaper in the short term, let's just exclude any other option. And that is just craziness, and it's immaturity at best in government. And so we're heavily opposed to this strong charge to renewables. It should be in the mix. There's space for renewables in the mix, but certainly there's a critical requirement for heavy baseload. And both major parties have signed up to these protocols where they want to phase out coal-fired power stations. So it is the only option. That's why 32 other countries in the world have nuclear power plants in their country, and another 50 or so plan to, because the rest of the world sees it as a viable option, but we seem to think we're smarter than the rest of the world. I think we're just, easily manipulated by the wokey Greens who scare us into not talking about nuclear. So it represents a really strong, viable, energy supplier generator for us in the future. And it's just, I think, it's weak politicians that refuse to consider it holding Australia back in the future. And I commend Peter Dutton for pushing something like this.
Robbie Katter, thank you for your time and your insight into all these very, very important issues.
Thank you.